body. Okay, we'll put a human head on a bird body, and that'll be the symbol of their soul. And they called it the Ba, B-A, the Ba. So here you see the souls coming down out of heaven yesterday into the dung world in the beginning age, into monkey bodies. See the monkey there? That's a baboon monkey. And Hermes comes with them because that's the symbol, Hermes, the baboon. And you will have lifetimes looking back. Now, if you go down to the original wall, you will see on the right that everything's done in black. That is not negative. It's immature, undeveloped. So that was a period of not realizing the whole truth. We were still immature psyches, but we were powerful because we were celestial children, children of God. In the middle, you see the circle with these huge arms and hands. The Egyptians said, how can we convey their spirit? Spirit is the life force, soul is the story. And they said, well, let's put their hands in the position of adoration and remove their heads. It's not the thinking, it's not you, it's the essence of the feeling you have when you're in adoration. That's spirit. Wasn't that a clever way to do it? And when they do the arms and hands really large, it's the great spirit. And the circle is the great consciousness of Ra. And we are all rays of the great Ra. They used to pronounce it Ray, but we all pronounce it Ra. We are the rays of the great Ray. And that is with us the whole time. Now, as we rise out of here in the future, you notice that the boat rising up has the dung body with the ram's head slightly shifted and souls honoring it and a bird on the bow. See the little bird on the bow? So now you're coming out of the monkey body, the baboon body, light as a bird. And what is pulling you up out of it? Human-headed cobra bodies. Do you see them? Now, in the video, there's the little bird body, and there's the baboon body, and here are the human-headed cobras. See? Lion of yesterday, lion of tomorrow. The secret, you're welcome. The secret to understanding human-headed cobras is that the Egyptians looked around and said, how can we convey to them the life force that they need to raise in order to pull themselves out of this? And you have to go to Jesus and Nicodemus to get the answer, believe it or not. Nicodemus is a member of the Sanhedrin, leadership of the Jews. He sneaks away one time and asks the master for some insight into the mysteries. And of course, the most famous thing Jesus says is, you must be born again. And Nicodemus, being a very earthy man, says, how can I climb back into my mother's womb? I'm sure Jesus went, oh, this is going to be hard. He says no, Nicodemus, that which is flesh, but you must give birth to your spiritual self. See? The second birth is the birth of your spiritual self, which occurs in the womb of your consciousness. Okay? Then the second thing he tells Nicodemus is no one ascends to heaven who didn't first descend from heaven, even the Son of Man. All of you are heavenly beings who came here. In fact, at the Last Supper, he turns to doubting Thomas and Philip and he says, you know where I'm going and you know the way. And of course, like you and me, they say, what? We have no idea. I said, oh, yes, you do. Latent within you is all of this that you've done. Your descent from heaven into matter is latent there. In fact, Edgar Cayce was once asked, what will it be like when we get fully illuminated? And the answered, familiar. He wouldn't let go of the fact that you're a heavenly being, even though your ego and your flesh has taken you over. He would not let go of that. It will be familiar because you are actually a heavenly being. So the third thing Jesus says to Nicodemus helps us with the cobras. Amazingly, Jesus says to Nicodemus, as Moses raised the serpent in the desert, so must the Son of Man and the sons and daughters of man be raised up to eternal life. Now, Moses was well educated, so he would have immediately, Moses, the desert, oh yes, he left Pharaoh and Egypt and all the wealth he had because he got a sense that he might be someone else, something else about him. He might belong to something bigger. So he went out into the desert to search for his true self and for God. Now watch how this author does this. It's really clever. Moses comes upon a deep well around which 7 virgins are standing. Give me a break. This is not common in the desert. This guy's trying to tell me something else. The 7 maidens cannot water themselves or their flocks because all the other herdsmen keep pushing them away. Moses, one guy, drives all the herdsmen away and waters the 7 maidens. Get the idea? The 7 spiritual centers from the deep well of water in the desert of this world. Then the girls tell him a secret. We're the daughters of a high priest. Whoa. Just happened to have 7 virgins of the high priest standing at a well when you went searching for your true self and God. He goes to the tent of the high priest and marries the eldest daughter, the highest spiritual center, the highest chakra. Then he has an illumination in a flaming bush. That bush, if you go to the New Testament, where does the Holy Spirit appear on the holy women and the disciples? Right over the crown chakra, right? That's probably the same thing that happened to Moses when he saw God in a flaming bush, and God said, Moses, raise the serpent off the desert floor. Nicodemus might have even realized that not only did Adam and Eve fall in the garden, the serpent fell also. The life essence. You drew yourself down here and lowered your vibes. And God is saying to Moses, Moses, if you want to come up on this mountain and meet me face to face, you have got to raise your life force because you're running at 33 RPM and I'm vibrating at infinite vibrational level. You got to raise the serpent off the desert floor. And Nicodemus would have realized right then that this teaching is about raising your vibrations. Not only do you have to expand your consciousness, but you have to raise the life force from your lower chakras up into your higher chakras. Edgar Cayce explained the 4 lower chakras are of the earthy energy, the 3 upper of the heavenly energy. In a few minutes, we're going to see Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and this will be clearer to you. So here we are coming into the earth, and now we're trapped in the cycles that Buddha explained to us, the enlightened Buddha, cycles of birth, life, death, and rebirth. And I've drawn this little schematic. This little drawing at the bottom is the Egyptian depiction of the light consciousness of souls reincarnating. It's called the reincarnation of Ra and the rays. The little circle on the top of her head on the far right, that is where it begins, and it goes right to left, is your soul mind coming into a body for the first time. And then notice there's a flower and a star above her. The star is your spirit, and the flower is the sowing of your seed here. Your actions create a certain karma here. You sow it, then you die. You see the line taking you back out to the circle again. You have a sojourn beyond incarnation. You come back, you reap what you sowed the last time and sow new seeds, and the cycle keeps going over and over. And this is the Egyptian depiction of reincarnation. I just want to point out a few things to you. The body you're incarnating now was not the body in the previous life. We buried or burned that, right? But Edgar says, in your mind is the memory of that. And so you do influence the body, even though your parents give you a new gene pool, your mind influences. That's why, how many of you, like me, have had multiple children and not one of them are the same? Right? And physically, Doris and I had a gene pool and they don't look alike. In fact, I'm a little concerned about one of them might not be mine. Not so, really, just joke. That's because, Edgar says, the soul influences the body's development once the soul comes in. We'll see more of that in a minute. So I want you to know you've got a new body here, and Jesus actually refers to this. He says, you leave your house with the 7 devils, you go out, and we cleanse it, and you come back and bring 7 devils back into the new house. And everybody went, what's he referring to? He's referring to the 7 chakras in your new body that you come back into. I don't want you to be misled by this drawing because I drew it evenly. Incarnations are not even. Some of these lower lines actually could be only 4 months long. For example, Edgar Cayce gave readings to newborn babies in New England who had just been killed a few months earlier in the bombings of London. See how fast they came back? So their line would be real quick. He and Rudolf Steiner, you're familiar with Steiner in Europe? They were contemporaries, Edgar Cayce and Steiner. They say the soul does not come into the body all at once. It comes in stages. The first stage, Edgar explains, is somewhere close to the birth of the body, 24, 48 hours before or after. So someone said, well, what keeps the body alive if the soul's not there? And he said, the spirit. Spirit is the life force. Soul is the individual. And he said, sometimes souls linger and think, do I really want to do this? And he says sibling order could change if the firstborn decides, I don't want to do this, and pulls away, the second comes in. And then usually the first gets daring, and next time there's a baby opportunity, it comes in, and it resents the firstborn, talking to it like it's superior, because it was supposed to be first. Edgar would give readings and explain these things to people. Sometimes your incarnation can be very long, and then the top half circle there in soulful sojourn could be extremely long. He said some Atlanteans left here and didn't come back for thousands of years because there was nothing here to interest them. So you see, it's not as even as I did. It could be these half-moon circle cycles could be shorter or longer than what I drew evenly here. But eventually, we stop incarnating. He actually gave readings for people in which he said, this will be your last incarnation. That's interesting, isn't it? You are a star being. You can do things elsewhere. You don't have to be here. We travel in soul groups. Most of the people in your life today you have known. Most of you in this room, we have all been together at some cycle of incarnation, very likely. Most likely Egypt, Atlantis, something like that. You travel in soul groups, and that builds relationships, soul relationships. Now, this is a soul group, but these are the Shylights. And when I was a young man, they had 2 hit songs that I loved, Oh Girl and Have You Seen Her? And they're the only people I think could wear these suits. But of course, this isn't the type of soul group I'm talking about. I'm talking about this type of soul group. Edgar Cayce explains to us that this is not simple. It's somewhat complex. So assume that the red circle in the middle is you, and all the other interconnecting circles are other people in your soul group, and let's say the bluish violet one are your intimate souls. Father, son, daughter, sister, brother, lover, all of those sort of intimate relationships. But even they could have connection with other souls. Look at the lower light yellowish one with a blue circle in the middle. That shows you that some of your soul group may actually have had experiences in a group you never had experiences with. So he doesn't want you to think it's very simple. I'll give you a living example. For about 20 years, Edgar Cayce gave health readings. That's all he gave. He was a psychic diagnostician, big long term for his health readings. One time he was in Ohio giving a health reading, and the individual got frustrated by it and said, well, why do I have this illness? And Cayce calmly said, because in a previous life in France as a monk. You abuse the body, and this is the karma of that situation. And everybody freaked out. Whoa, reincarnation. So the whole family wanted to get readings, past life readings. They were nicknamed life readings. And everybody gets a series of incarnations, one of which for everyone was as an incarnation during the time of Jesus, except Edgar's wife, Gertrude. Well, she didn't like that very much. She told him, listen, I love Jesus as much as you guys. And she pouted about that. And you know, if you're a married couple, you got to live with this woman. So he said, let's do a check reading. She was up for that. So he goes into trance, and here's how he did it briefly. He put his hands over his forehead, and he saw a white light. Once he saw that white light, he would move his hands over his solar plexus, and he would start to go into deep breathing and REM, rapid eye movement. He was falling asleep. He was moving into the subconscious. Gertrude, his wife, or his eldest son, Hulin, would give him the suggestion at that moment, you will have before you the inquiry, and the light would move. And he would follow the light to the hall of records of that soul. And the keeper of the records would bring out the book of life of that soul. And everything you have thought or done is in there. Oh. So, they say, you gave everyone an incarnation in Palestine when Jesus was there, Gertrude. And he comes back sort of edgy and says, the suggestion you gave me was who was incarnate. Gertrude's soul was the guardian angel of the disciple Andrew, and if she hadn't helped him, he would have fallen off the path several times. Well, whew. Needless to say, Gertrude was happy about that. This is okay. But do you see what that means for you and me? If you love someone, if you are into caring about others, and you are not incarnate, you may actually be a guardian angel to an incarnate soul that you know needs your help. Isn't that something? You can be a guardian angel. Now, Edgar does explain that the angelic part of yourself is your primary angel. He says the angel that is you. But here's another soul's angelic self helping you because it loves you. How many of you have had a deceased loved one come to you at times of struggle? Yeah, see, it's so true. I love this. So we travel in soul groups. Then the main soul group is the morning stars. This is the soul group of every soul on the physical planet Earth. Now get this, Edgar says there are souls who never came here. They are having similar experiences elsewhere and different experiences. He says during the enlightenment period that's coming, the people of the earth will meet the people of the universe. Whoa. All my UF friends go, told you so, John, told you. Yes, there are aliens to our reality, and you have to understand, coming into this world required a long period of development. The only way to get in here physically and with your soul is through a woman. I don't know if you realize that or not. That's the only way. But it takes a lot for a celestial being to make a transition into a three-dimensional physical reality and gradually build into a functioning being in that reality. The aliens that haven't been here before are trying to figure out how we do this. That's why sometimes you see these events in which they've been looking at the genitalia of cows or the birthing mechanism of animals and all, attempting to understand this, because they don't see how we can pull this off. It is a magnificent shift that we learned over a long period of time and have become very good at. And so we are a rare group called the Morning Stars, and he says we're the people of the earth, and we will meet the people of the universe, and eventually we will be in a fully enlightened period, which I'll save for later. Got to keep moving here. How do we incarnate? The soul, this is one of my favorite wood carvings I ever found that seems to show the beautiful dynamic of your soul self. Notice how light she is. She's smiling. She's holding the flower over her heart. Everything the artist draws with her is uplifting, flowing upward, and her crown chakra and all. And then here's the dense, containing physical body that she's going to enter. That's your soul coming in to physical incarnation. And it comes in through the fontanelle in the baby body. The portal into the human body is your fontanelle. And Edgar says, then it seals over, and you are encased for a sojourn. Yikes. You see how that happens? Your soul came into the nervous system of this little baby vehicle that your mom and dad made using the forces of nature, and pushed its way into the brain and into the spinal column. Now, if you read Ecclesiastes in the Bible carefully, you will actually see a secret teaching in there. The preacher of Ecclesiastes says, the golden bowl must be broken or open, and the silver cord, your spinal column and nervous system, the silver cord must be loose, and dust must return to dust, and the soul to God who gave it. Hint, hint, deep meditation discussion right there, or a glorified death, but usually a deep meditative connection. Open the golden bowl, loose the silver cord, rise up with the soul, and leave the body still. And Edgar, when he was teaching meditation, would often say, set the earthly concerns aside. Set them aside. Sort of that's the prep. And then arise, my soul, and expand. So here's how you came in. And this wood carving, I think, is so beautiful. There you are in that condition, and here you are totally contained in a physical organism, and that organism is going to change, go through changes and all, and you're going to have to adjust to those. Here's Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, and believe it or not, he gives us the key that this physical organism that's so wonderful for physical operation is secretly designed for metaphysical experience. And he points out to you that the medical, he doesn't do it literally, but when you study what he does, it relates literally to the medical caduceus, or the staff of Mercury, it was called in ancient times. So the white circle and the golden shaft is, see my brain and my spinal column going down, your cerebrospinal system. The double serpents, everybody wonders, are Ida and Pingala right out of Yoga Sutras. But they relate to your autonomic nervous system, which has two parts, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Cayce taught all of this to people who really wanted to learn. The sympathetic is that part of your nervous system that reacts to things. Sympathy to the condition, so fight or flight, all of that, that's the sympathetic. The parasympathetic, once you relax, comes in and tries to restore the body, re-nourish the body, rebuild the body. And that's part of your autonomic system. Now, over here, I've got the chakras, because Cayce related the chakras to the endocrine glands. And you see on the right is a female body, and on the left is a male. The body has two sides. And so the root chakra on the male are the testes, and on the female, on the right side, are the ovaries. Don't worry if you had a hysterectomy. These are psychic dynamic centers first, physical tissues secondly. So you still can have compensation. One of the problems with this medical drawing is the navel chakra is not drawn, but they know about it. They publish it in other works. It's called the cells of Leydig, named after the doctor who found them. So the navel chakra could have been on here. They would have called it the cells of Leydig, and that's the endocrine gland of that center. Your solar plexus center are the adrenal glands and the pancreas. This is the powerful adrenaline. You know how quickly you can pump that into your system. Hormones are secreted by the endocrine glands, and they are powerful. If you're not aware of that, just ask any woman in this audience. She will explain it to you. hormones are super powerful immediately in the bloodstream. And imagine adrenaline, how quickly adrenaline. And any of you who have pumped some adrenaline know how long it takes to get it out of your bloodstream once you get it in. The heart chakra is not the pump, but the thymus gland, which became famous due to AIDS. It's the producer of the T cells that really build your immune system. So you see, it became very famous when we realized an illness that destroyed the immune system. We started to learn about the thymus, because otherwise we didn't know much about it. The thyroid gland is the throat chakra. And then this brain is turned sideways so you can see the two glands in the brain, or this gal has had a serious car accident. The first is the pineal gland, dead in the center of your brain, or sometimes called the pineal body. And then you come over to the large frontal lobe of your brain, and hanging just underneath it, behind the brow of your head and just above the palate in your mouth, right there, and your temples, is the master glands of the body, the hypothalamus and the pituitary. And they are the master glands of the body. When you imagine now, Cayce's trying to tell you, you have the most powerful features secretly built into your body to transform your energy. You do. Just start meditating a little bit, or awakening your mind to higher thoughts, and your hormones change. Immediately, the master gland says, whoa, what's he trying to do? Let's change the message throughout the body. Now, do you realize what you're doing? You are sending new messages, new hormones throughout your system that create healthier, more holistic, more interconnected sense of oneness of your being and higher purpose. You're going to see this later in a Cayce reading when I get to it. This is a very powerful stuff. You also need to know that your whole self has yin and yang, both masculine and feminine. This is Shiva and Shakti here. And believe it or not, this is clearly explained in Genesis, the book of the Bible. You won't believe it, I know. Chapter 2, verse 18 to 25, God says, they are lonely here. And you may not realize it, but Adam with a lower A in Hebrew means a being, a person, not a man. But English Bibles in Genesis translate lower A Adam, man. It's unfortunate. But here's what really bugs me. In the book of Numbers, they don't. They translate it person. Ooh, I just hope I'm not one of those idiots who did that. Also, you need to know this. The Hebrew word for rib, Selah, the Hebrew word for rib, is actually the same Hebrew word for side. And here's what gets me. When God describes building the Ark of the Covenant to Moses, he uses that word for the sides of the Ark. Oh man, did they do a disservice in Genesis to shift it to the word rib in English, when literally it means a side of the person. The whole Adam with the little a is androgynous, has male and female in it. God says they're lonely in this duality. He casts a deep sleep over the androgynous Adam being and pulls out the feminine, the yin energy to make us separate, and these two can companion with one another. And the first Hebrew word used to describe her is kava, life giver. Kava means the life giver. That is in each of us. No matter what gender you're sitting in right now, you have both of these forces within you. The depth psychologist Carl Jung actually says, John, you can't be fully conscious. You can't reach full consciousness unless you get in touch with your feminine, right? Males have to get in touch, because what's just beyond the veil of my masculine projection? The feminine essence of my whole psyche. Do you see that? And women know this too. You're projecting the feminine, the yin of your whole self, of your whole psyche, and therefore if you want to be more fully conscious, you've got to get in touch with your masculine, which is just behind the veil. Carl Jung called it animus for the yang and anima for the yin. And he explained that a man like me who has a dream of a female of some special quality, not necessarily one I know out here, but a feminine in my dream is probably my anima. And my soul and I are communicating. You ladies, if you have a dream of a distinct male in your dream, not one you know out here necessarily, but it could be if you use them as a symbol, but generally no, that could be your animus, the essence of your soul self, and the two of you are communing. Do you see that? That was Carl Jung's idea, very interesting, and you just need to be aware that you have these. It doesn't mean I'm going to become more feminine or woman-like, not at all, but I'm more in touch with the qualities of the yin, the intuitive, the nurturing, all of those qualities. And it means you're going to become in touch with the qualities of the yang. Also, we have soulmates. And now Edgar Cayce gave us a great insight into this when one lady came to him and asked, is my soulmate incarnate while I'm on the earth? And he said, yes, about 30 of them. What? What? You're focusing a little too much on the mating. Soulmate are souls that you have traveled with so much that you guys have a magnetic attraction to one another. And she said, well, how would I pick the right one? And he said, that depends on your ideals. What are you looking for? When I read that reading, I thought to myself, well, heck, what was my ideal at 18? Yeah, you know. What was what was my ideal at 28, 38, 48, 78? Do you see? So if two souls are really going to bond, even though they have the soulmate dynamic attraction to one another, they have to also be able to change as the ideals change, and grow as transition grows. That makes, if you've been married long enough and it's a good marriage, you know that deep, easy love that builds over a long period of time. It's just magnificent to experience that. So, but you have to understand that you have to make shifts because life is going to change, so are your ideals. Our soul does not die, never, ever. And Edgar said the first 10 minutes after death, you're going to become aware of that, and it might startle you that you're still alive. And he said in 1930s that in the late 60s and 70s, you're going to have a new understanding of death. And what occurred in that period? The medical profession became so sophisticated that you could die on them and they could bring you back to life. The problem was what occurred in the recovery room. And it went something like this. The doctor would walk in and say, boy, we had a close one with you. And the patient would say, yeah, I was amazed when you jumped up on my chest like that. And the doctor would go, wait a minute, you were dead on the table. Yeah, I thought it was strange too, but I was standing over in the corner and the nurse did this, you did that. And these doctors simply gathered these stories and started publishing them in the early 70s. Now there are over 30 books on this on Amazon.com and probably another 100 of crazy ones. I've looked at them too. But here is the idea that your soul self does survive, and it's a little startling to you once the death occurs that you still find yourself. But notice, I don't have my vocal cords anymore to vibrate your eardrums. So you can't hear me because my vocal cords are laying dead on the table. I don't have the surface of my skin to reflect light into the cones of your eyes. So there is a startle that occurs. Wait a minute, they don't see me or hear me. Yikes, what has happened? And Edgar says you gradually, out of that searching, move into your deeper self and gradually move into your soul consciousness, your subconscious. So here are some of the books, and this is Eben Alexander, who came out with the Proof of Heaven book, and some lady I don't know. All right, soul growth, Cayce points out the pearl. You know, Tib has told you an awful lot about stones. Well, Edgar did indeed talk about stones. And he said if you would carry a pearl, it would help you with some of the hard parts of life. Because he says, how does the oyster make a pearl? It's an irritant that gets into the oyster. And by facing that irritant and over a period of time constantly working with this, it makes the beautiful iridescent pearl. And that makes a beautiful soul. engaging with the challenges of your life. The Egyptians knew this, and they said dung happens here. And they taught that the dung beetle was an example of resurrection. So they said, in the dung of your life, you have the greatest opportunity to plant a seed like the dung beetle does into that ball of dung, and they would roll it to the morning sun, toward the morning sun. By high noon, that little ball of dung and that seed were smoking hot, and the seed would burst forth with new life, and that's why they drew this wonderful symbol of the winged scarab with the consciousness of God, raw consciousness, and in its little back legs are yin and yang. The circle is yin, the shaft is yang. Also, the circle symbolizes infinity, and the shaft symbolizes temporality. So your temporal life and your infinite life have united. Your feminine and masculine have united. You have resurrected. You've spread your wings, and you've risen out of all the hardships. Even depth psychologists will tell you, and AA and all those wonderful organizations will tell you, in your greatest weakness lies your greatest potential for strength. Because if you engage that and are victorious with it, you have overcome something amazing, and you have gained a terrific soul power in yourself and in your mind, and you'll never be the same again having do it. So dung is an important part of your life. Hardship and trouble. Here's Cayce on soul growth. Never think too highly of yourself, and never belittle yourself too much. You have almost lost hold of yourself at times and feeling sorry for yourself. You have nothing to feel sorry for. God is just as mindful of you, though you have made a wreck of some people's lives. And you will to meet that, or it, but that you are alive, that you are conscious, that you have the opportunity in this period to apply yourself to the reconstruction of what man is to look forward to, should encourage you to know that God is mindful of each soul. Then use the abilities that you have, and you have many. You are created in the image of the creator of the entire cosmos. Latent within you are immense talents, abilities. In AA, they come out and they talk about making amends. Don't surrender, don't give up. Get up and improve. Reconstruct the positive. Take hold of the opportunity. And it's just a wonderful, uplifting, strengthening, illuminating victory over some of your challenges, some of your weaknesses. Edgar said, the fruits of the Spirit, if you apply these will transform you, because the seeds and the fruits of the Spirit create the Spirit anew. Do that which is good, for there has been given in the consciousness of all the fruits of the Spirit: fellowship, kindness, gentleness, patience, long-suffering, love. These be the fruits of the Spirit. Against such there is no law. Doubt, fear, avarice, greed, selfishness, self-will, these are the fruits of the evil forces. Against such there is a law. Self-preservation, then, should be in the fruits of the Spirit. And you seek through any channel to know more of the path from life to life, from good to good, from death unto life, from evil unto good. Seek, and you shall find. Meditate on the fruits of the Spirit in the inner secrets of the consciousness, and the cells of the body become aware of the awakening of life in their activity through the body. In the mind, the cells of the mind become aware of the life in the Spirit. The Spirit of life makes not afraid. Then know the way, for those that seek may find. That's an absolute promise. Here's one of the fruits of the Spirit, kindness. And here's Richard Carlson, the author of Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all small stuff. Choose being kind over being right, and you'll be right every time. And I have to share with you that the first 20-some years of my life, I was the guy who everything had to be right. And I was always firm about that. And then I read this book, and it changed me tremendously. somehow my self-will of being right and making sure everyone else was right was suspended for a while I just tried to be kind. And in that, I would be right every time, and it changed me. It shifted me from a mental mindset, willful set, to a heart, caring tenderness, and people started to really like me, who hadn't liked me much prior to that. Here's Paul on love. Love is patient, love is kind, and is not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own, it is not provoked, does not take into account a wrong suffered, does not rejoice into unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Another powerful fruit of the Spirit. I have on occasionally intentionally spent a day only projecting the spirit of love. And I went through the whole day, and it was marvelous, helpful to everyone else, except I noticed occasionally they'd get over to the water fountain and said, have you seen John today? He's, a little strange, because we normally don't do this. But I want to explain you have to have the right heart. Edgar Cayce said, using the same methods, the same concepts, you can make a Godling or a Frankenstein depending on your heart, on your motivation, on why you're doing it. In the Eastern world, they teach that the bird of paradise has one wing that is the right technique, the right concepts, the right practice, but the other wing is the right heart, and the bird of paradise does not fly with one wing. So you must always examine your motivations, your heart. Why am I doing this? And when you awaken to that and are alerted to that, and you shine your light into your heart all the time, you grow fast. You grow very fast. Of course, karma, so there are things you're going to have to meet, and when they come before you, say, why has this appeared before me? Why has this happened? And what am I to learn here? Or if it's something inside you, an illness or a shift in your attitude or something, is why am I feeling this? Why am you know that it's coming so that you can grow. The challenges in your life are actually opportunities for soul growth. Grace, Cayce talked about, as one sets itself to accomplish that which is creative, life-giving, uplifting, influence, no longer is the entity under the law of cause and effect or karma, but rather in grace. And I wrote this book with all of his stuff in there. The mystery of grace is found in Jesus saying, not one jot or tittle will be erased from the law. When I first read that, I thought, well, there's no hope for me. He said, of course, the law is well expressed. Whatever you do with your free will, you experience. And the kids in high school have the saying, what goes around comes around. But Jesus said, now learn what this means. I seek mercy, not sacrifice. And here is the mystery in the law. What goes around comes around. If you start understanding mistakes, weaknesses, vices in other people, the law is still in effect. Understanding comes back upon you. If you forgive what someone said or did, the law is still in effect. Forgiveness comes back upon what you said or did. And Lord help you if you forget they said it. And if you've ever been married, you know what it's like 3 years down the road to have someone say, 3 years ago you said this. You go, what? I don't even remember that. But if you forget, the law's in effect. It's forgotten what you said or did. This is the power and why Jesus said not one jot or tittle will be erased, because the law is perfect. As you emote, as you give out, as you think, so does it come back upon you. Just shift what you're expressing, shift what you're thinking, and you begin the journey through grace. Here's a deep one I want to share with you. In the Revelation in chapter 12, John, who's having an ecstatic experience with the Spirit, sees a divine female in the heavens standing on the moon, 12 stars around her head, and the light of the sun illuminating her, and she's pregnant. And John knows she's about to deliver his fully developed, fully aware, divine self again. She's going to give birth to it. But swooping around her is a great red dragon ready to swallow that baby as soon as it comes out. And John starts to cry. And the archangel Michael comes up to John and says, "See the dragon? That's the serpent of the garden, grown big and strong now." And John starts to really weep because nobody's going to save the birth of his divine self. Darn. He has conceived it in the womb that she represents of his own consciousness, but he still has a problem. And then Michael and his legions ride out, and they drive the big dragon away. And she births the baby and ascends to heaven. And John is just overjoyed but stunned. So Archangel Michael comes back to John and says these strange words. Now the accuser has been driven out of heaven, because Michael and his legions drove the red dragon away. Who's the accuser? John. John's self-judgment, John's guilt, John's self-doubt. I am not worthy of this. As long as you keep that thought up, you block your potential, because God gave you free will and will not take it away from you. If you can simply let go of self-judgment and know God is all merciful, all understanding, Michael and his legions will drive that serpent that whispered to you in the garden and brought you into this whole mess away, and you can birth your true self, mature psyche, and ascend into heaven.